Thank you very much. Can you all hear me okay over there? Perfect. Thank you, Khaled. I have been actually working in the region for some time now, and I guess one of the things that strikes me as really peculiar for someone who comes from, originally from Latin America, but living in Europe, in the UK for many years, is that there is something that unifies the different countries, especially across the GCC, and I actually find quite interesting in some ways, which is the national vision. So I guess that's, this is very familiar to you, but most of the countries in the GCC or even beyond the GCC are running particular visions, and most of these visions are pretty much based on ways to upskill, to deliver the right skills to their citizens and ensure that they can succeed and take their countries, to the next level. And I think it's very admirable. I guess that it sort of gives a sense of direction. And I say this because I do work a lot with universities, governments, and I would say this is something that aligns with every single partnership that we establish from the Coursera perspective. And it kind of facilitates how we are set to develop things such as KPIs, etc. So I wanted to start with this because, again, I believe this is also connected to the the main preoccupation of Coursera. We basically work with institutions to help them delivering skills of all types. The question is, do we have, or do we know what these skills are? So from our perspective, what we tend to do is to look deep into our data, the type of engagement that we have with the different partners that we work across the region. And this almost serves as an X-ray for the types of work that we are going to be implementing out there. But where does it come from? I think that it would be nice to give you a little bit of a sense of, what is the ecosystem that at the moment we work with in Coursera. So people come to Coursera because they want to upskill, because they might want to have, they want to progress in their professional careers, they are unemployed, or they are preparing to go to university. So we have at the moment over 160, this is a little bit of an outdated number, but 160 million learners using Coursera worldwide. And they have obviously different reasons for taking our courses. But this relationship actually is quite cyclical. We do also work with educators. These are both universities and industry partners who are going to take the lead in terms of developing courses, specializations, professional certificates. And this is the type of content that is going to be relayed to the institutions that we are supporting. And at the moment, as you can see, we have more than 7,000 institutions working with Coursera across the globe. These are businesses, government agencies, universities, both private and public universities. And I would say the great thing about it is that you see more and more of an alignment between these different, let's say, verticals. I think that we will be talking a little bit more about this in the panel session today. But how do we go about it? So when people engage with our platform, when they start taking content, we want to know what they're learning. We want to know who they are and how they're learning. I think that this is very important because it gives a little bit of a sense of the trends around skills development. For example, if we're working with very large corporations who are training, personnel, I think that it's important for us to understand what types of skills they expect employees to have, because that's the type of information that we're going to relate to universities who are preparing those future employees. And I think this creates a really nice bond between industry and higher education. I hope you can still hear me because there's a little bit of an overlap of sound, but is that okay? Excellent, okay. So based on that and on, say, skills taxonomy that our solution consultant team works on, we develop reports as well as parameters that are going to be compared to different types of external reports like World Economic Forum, World Bank. These parameters are really useful to indicate the level of proficiency of skills that learners within different organizations have. And based on that, we are able to provide recommendations and build what we call internally learning pathways. So we are more and more incentivizing organizations to take different types of, learners within organizations to take different types of courses, because sometimes it's a matter of combining different skills. So this is actually one of the things that I want to talk to you about it. What are the results of these analyses? So when we look into the past 2-3 years, we have seen a huge, exponential growth in enrollments associated with Gen AI courses. So it's really interesting to see that, at the moment we have pretty much over 3.7 million registrations in courses like basics, Gen AI, or more advanced team collaboration, but all very much focused on this subject. Which is not to say that soft skills, or what some people call human skills, has been neglected. On the contrary, we actually see that from the 25 spotlight countries, 20 are very, very much invested in delivering soft skills. So I think that this is really, a nice photography of the fact that those two sets of skills are pretty much in demand. Although many people think that they should be separate, most of the organizations that we support are actually combining those skills. So again, we tend to look into how that translates into the metrics associated with the region. So as you can see, for example, with the Middle East and North Africa, we have over 9 million learners at the moment using Coursera with, median age of 31. And again, another thing that is really interesting is the increasing number of women participating in these programs. This year, by the way, we had a really successful event in Jeddah, which we call the Women Leadership Event Summit, and where we had business leaders, university leaders debating how this is actually transforming the role of women in society. And I think this is really one of the most big evidences of the power of online learning, how this is actually impacting things. But we're also working across other countries, like Egypt, probably the country with this smaller median age of 29. Saudi Arabia, where we have been working with top universities, companies like Saudi Aramco, as well as the United Arab Emirates, where we have really good partnerships with the likes of the Dubai Police, what else? Abu Dhabi University, and so on, so on. Now we come to the point of thinking to ourselves, like, how do we connect all this, like these different elements, these different organizations across a more aligned set of skills? What are the challenges when you think about organization leaders in terms of absorbing all that and transforming this into robust strategies? So this is something we're talking all the time with these leaders, and I thought today this would make a really nice conversation in the panel that we're going to have right now. So I would like to invite our panelists. I have the pleasure of having Scott Sherman, Alison Edrich, and Rihanna De Bruin. So if you would like to come to the stage, please. So, just to do a little bit of housekeeping, I think that I'd like to maybe start by giving all of you the opportunity to introduce yourselves, say a few things about your organization, about your role, and most importantly, how you feel you could contribute based on your expertise, to the topics of the discussions we're going to have here. So I'm going to maybe start with Scott.
Hi, I'm Scott Sherman. I'm the director of the Center for Innovation at the University of Michigan. My role, we're building a new center in downtown Detroit and really focused on how do we revitalize the regional economy, how do we create jobs, how do we create opportunity for the residents of my state. And so, one of the things I'm thinking about a lot is what are the future skills? What are the jobs in the next 10 years? What are the industries? Because we want to create the kind of talent, we want to create the kind of research opportunities that will bring companies to our region, produce jobs, and create opportunity for the residents of my state. So that's anything related to that is fair game.
Perfect. Thank you. Alison, if you...
Hi, I'm Alison Edrich. Is that working?
I think it's not, so if you could...
Sorry. Hi, I'm Alison Edrich. I'm Director of Global Talent Intelligence for a business called Lightcast. We live in a world that is full of data about people, about skills, about jobs, about the labour market. Lightcast has organised that data into a format that means it's intelligent and can provide insights to organisations. And so we use that data to power connections between industry and educational establishments. So that's what I hope you will speak to me about today.
Right. Rihanna, please go forward. Yeah, thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Rihanna. I won't try to tell you what my surname is because you'll spend 45 minutes trying to pronounce it. So I'm from South Africa. Johannesburg. I work for a company called Standard Bank, in Africa known as Stanbic. And you did invite me to say a couple of things about my organization, so indulge me. Biggest bank by assets on the continent. And Forbes recently, in the last 2 weeks, released the results of a survey they did, 850 companies of best employers to work for. And I'm very proud to say Standard Bank was 18th on that list globally of companies to work for. On the continent, we're rated by Forbes as the best company to work for, so I'm super proud. And in the banking world, we're the second global bank as a best bank to work for after JP Morgan, but they must watch out, we're coming for them. We are very skills focused and have been for quite a period of time. I am personally very involved and engaged in skills in the organization. We are 162 years old. We do not want to be a Kodak story. We want to continue for another 162 years. I won't be there for that time, but we would like to at least make sure that we have the skills in the organization, and I want to play a role in making sure that we do. So very passionate about skills, very passionate about people empowerment and the development of people.
Thank you so much. I really want to double check because there is a very big amount of noise over here, but I'm worried that you can hear me, you can hear us okay, correct? Excellent, that's great. So I'd like to start maybe with you, Alison. So I was presenting the slides, and obviously, as you can see, there is a bit of a dichotomy when you think of technical and soft skills, to the point when many institutions are a bit worried about the fact that, yes, there will be less and less focus on soft skills because there's so much demand on Gen AI what's the role of, say, critical thinking, especially with the impact of Gen AI. I'd love to know from your perspective, from your organization's perspective, how you're balancing that. Does it mirror what you see in your organization? And beyond those two, let's say, set of skills frameworks, do you see other things coming up in the field in the next few years?
Yeah, great question. So I think that first and foremost, of course, we see an increase in demand for Gen AI and actually for all technical skills. So, an increase in digital security, an increase in cybersecurity. But I think there's also two other trends that we have seen increasingly. One of those have been driven by the pandemic. And so lots of leadership and soft skills around how do we manage people virtually, for example. And those are very different trends to a hard Gen AI skill and how do I learn this. And then I think really interestingly, much more of what we call transition-driven trends, skill trends. And that's linked to the fact that we've got leaders who are trying to embrace Gen AI within their organizations, but actually what they need is they need the functional expertise of their employees still in order to be able to then support the Gen AI and model. And that's about creating new skills journeys and new career pathways for those individuals. Beyond 2024, kind of wave a magic wand, but the labour market is shrinking. In every major economy in the world, we are running out of people of working age. So this is not necessarily a conversation about do we have the people with the right skills, it's how do we get the right skills? We don't have enough of the right people, right? So there has to be a focus on people as well as on skilling. And because the labour market is changing so fast and so rapidly, you have to be able to put skills within the context of what companies are seeking. So one of the things that I think we'll touch on today is what's the difference between the skills that are sought and the skills that are taught.
Yeah. And picking up on it, I would be curious to know how does it reflect and what are, let's say, the measures that are implemented in terms of like the vertical functions, like how things change from different levels, and let's say how this would affect strategic training programs that are implemented when you consider leadership training, mid-level management, bulk of employees.
I'm not sure we're seeing any major trends actually across each of those different levels. I think we're just seeing a general demand for skills, right? And linked to that is what I think we'll hear from Rihanna particularly today, is how are organizations beginning to look through the lens of skills, right? It's still really unusual for an organization to be able to say, we understand the skills that we've got and we understand the skills that we need, and therefore we understand the gap. I think as we see more organizations start to understand that gap, then we'll start to be able to see what does the data tell us about the difference in levels, but not yet.
Okay, very well. Brianna, I wanted to ask you about, let's say, identification and measurement of skills. When you think about the challenges, let's say, challenges that organizations are facing in terms of defining skills trends or are aligned with the field of their work, how your organization goes about identifying those skills, setting up metrics, and based on those, developing your training programs.
All right, I just want to make sure I heard the question correctly, because like you say, there's quite a challenge with the sound. So it's first about how do we identify the skills and then how do we go about measuring them. So we've literally just finished two assessments in the organization. One was in internal audit and one was in non-financial risk. And the first question when people come to me to say, we want to assess skills, is why? What do you want to do with the data once you've assessed the skills? Because the rigor you're going to put into the assessment is determined by what you want to do with that data. In most cases, it's directional. It's a baseline. People want to start to get a sense of what do we look like against a particular skill set. And when we use an assessment for baseline data, then that's the level of rigor we put into it, and we know it's directional. You're not going to make critical decisions around it, but at least it's going to give you a sense of what's your risk exposure against that skill. The second thing then is, what are those skills? And this is where it becomes problematic, is that you need in your organization a unified language around skills. You need to standardize on what we call a skill, what we call a capability, what we call a competency. And you also need to, just in that skill, understand what we define it as. So if you say, my skill is data, what about data? If you say, I want to assess what my people know about cloud, what about cloud do you want to assess? So you've got to have a definition. The third thing I want to say is, you also need to get your job architecture aligned. If your business still talks job description, if your business still talks roles, if your business does not talk skills, it's very difficult because you're not talking the same language, and it becomes problematic to understand and interpret the outcome of the work that you're doing. So those are some of the challenges that we face when we look at skills. Measuring the skills are really not the difficult part. You can do it through a survey. You can use your LXP. You can use AI to look at LinkedIn Learning, what skills are being inferred. If you have an opportunity marketplace, it will infer skills for you. If you've got money, you can throw money at the measurement. Measuring the skill is not the problem. It's all the planning and the work that goes before that. And then the problem is the insights, and the challenge is, how do you interpret what you find as an outcome? Because if you don't know the picture that you are moving towards, the picture that you have is meaningless. So if you can say that I have a high level of competency in the ability to audit financial statement, that's great. But is that the competency that you need? So you also need, the challenge is to understand, what is it that you are measuring against? Where are you moving to? What does that future skill picture look like? And this is where this research becomes incredibly valuable, because the research from organizations like Coursera starts to help us to build the picture, so that once we've measured the skill, we can identify the gap and the development. So for me, when we look at skill measurement, it's really not about the actual measurement. It's also not about the design and development of the solution. It's the stuff that goes before it, and it's the insights that you derive from it that makes you understand what is the action that you need to take. And we find business really struggles with that. They understand they've got a gap, but they don't quite know what that gap is. And they also can't define what that gap is for you. And that's the challenge that I find in the skill audits become really difficult.
That's an excellent answer. I mean, I wanted to approach you, Scott, because obviously we've been talking a lot about vision and, you know, obviously at a macro level, but I guess that the corollary of vision is also the implementation of a culture of learning. And it's been highlighted how fast things are changing. So my question would be, how do you cope with that in terms of establishing, you know, an agile, organic process of skills implementation, training, when things are changing so fast?
Yeah, that's a good question. And in my role, I've been tasked within the University of Michigan of creating this innovation curriculum and kind of predicting, you know, how do we prepare students for the jobs that'll be here in 10 years. And by the way, the degrees I launch may only last 10 years because the skills are going to be changing and we need to be constantly, that's a really difficult problem. How I've been thinking of it is we need to identify sort of the industries, the job roles, the kind of key trends. We need to make sure that we are educating graduates that have the skills deep in those areas, but then we also need to make sure we're giving them a breadth of skills and capabilities that will allow them to cope in this change. And what I mean by that is some of it we talked about with human skills. Some of it I see, Dr. Barbara Oakley out there who, the learning how to learn, right? We need to teach all of our students how to learn, right? We need to teach resilience. But also, I'm looking at, I want every graduate of whatever, regardless of the program, coming to my school, they should be able to recognize opportunity. They should be able to think about designing solutions that will scale. They should know how to lead interdisciplinary teams because all of the interesting problems in the world are interdisciplinary in nature, right? So we need to make sure we have people who don't just live in a silo but know how to work across teams. And also we need to educate people who are fluent in AI because regardless of the job, they're going to have some component of AI. So that's kind of how I think about, right, the depth of skills and then the breadth of skills and those resilient skills that are going to enable people to ride the waves as we have them.
It's really great. I mean, I when I'm out there talking to university leaders, government, obviously the conversation flows. It seems like for the vast majority of people, the urgency is out there. But when it comes to the execution, the implementation, there are always some resistance. And this is not only in relation to Gen AI. I would say learning development in general, and this goes across different verticals. I would see that within the university spectrum, let's say corporate, usually because there is always the fear that you're going to be your job is going to be the next one to be automated. But there are also other reasons out there. Now, my question to all of you is, how do you overcome that resistance? What sort of tactics, what level of engagement with either students or employees? I'd love to get a little bit more input from all of you on that topic, if that's okay. Alison, feel free to.
I don't mind going first, yeah. So,
please.
We work with 67 of the Fortune 100. We work with more than 150 HR and EdTech providers globally. So I haven't done this in-house with an organization, but skills transformation is massive change transformation. And Rihanna, you talked to this earlier. You've got to understand your why, and you have to communicate your why. Because when you communicate the why, and that might be creating new career pathways, but actually it might be how do we reskill people whose jobs are going to be automated. And unless you can communicate that why to your audience, you are going to meet with resistance.
Yeah, thank you. Let me see if I can build on that slightly. When we talk to people about themselves and their skills, the change management is very important, but we change the focus to future-proofing yourself. The job will change, the role will change, but you can future-proof yourself to the best of your ability. And what we try to do through the assessments is to help the individual understand the assessment, as much as it creates a baseline for the organization, is actually for their benefit. It's for them to understand, what do I need to develop to future-proof myself, to secure myself in the place of work? And so for me, it's about the messaging, Alison, as well. How do we talk to people about skills? How do we take the fear and the sting out of it? Also, when we do the assessment, we de-link it from performance. When we did the skill assessments, we make it very clear the executive of that area comes in and they de-link the skill assessment from performance so that people understand the emphasis is development. Because that's what people fear. Think about what people fear. You've got to talk to the fear of people. People fear losing my job. If I lose my job, I lose my money, I lose my income, I lose my car, I lose my house, I lose my respect. You've got to speak to the fear of the person. Secure the fear and say, this is not about your job, this is not about your performance. This is in actual fact helping you proactively, future-proofing, skill-proofing yourself so that you don't have to have that fear. And that's what we try to do. It's not easy, but if you understand the resistance comes from fear, and you can address that fear through what you're doing, the adoption and the acceptance of that is just slightly easier. The pain is the pain. You've got to go and sit down and do the work and study the skill and acquire it. The pain's the pain. But take the fear, which raises the anxiety, a little bit out of that.
Now, could I actually extend that question based on what I asked you? On the point of resistance, like, well, let's say the next step would be, fair enough, you're going to establish a very robust learning strategy, training. My question for both of you is, how easy or difficult you could actually align that training with career progression? Let's say, thinking about the skills that would be most relevant within your industries and becoming obvious that there would be, let's say, a return on investment to the company, to the organization, etc. But how easy it is to, align all that with a clear pathway. I mean, do you have examples in your organizations where this is already in practice?
I can give a couple of examples of clients. So the first, actually through a major consulting firm, we work with a large American insurance business who were looking at their claims adjuster role. So they used to have claims adjusters. So if someone had a car accident, their claims adjuster would go to site, take photos of the car, ask questions, come back, review those, and then figure out what would happen with the claim. What's happened in that industry is that you now have image recognition technology and machine learning technology that can look at those photos and analyze them in seconds and solve a claim in literally minutes rather than across the board. But what they needed to do was then make sure that they were training the algorithms that sat behind that technology with the functional expertise that the claims adjusters had. So actually this is about not replacing your job, it's about using your skills in a different way. It's creating the jobs of the future. And this is about saying, how can you help us to be more efficient as an organization? Another example, a large major US retailer who have been through a skills transformation program, and they were looking at customer services, particularly within their organization. And their ROI has been about training people to take the progression from customer services shop floor to shop floor leader and then on. And they've showed a $13,000 saving per employee by not losing people and then having to bring them back into the organization.
So in Standard Bank, we hold our purpose very high. Every person in the bank knows the purpose of the bank. And the purpose is Africa is our home. We drive her sustainable growth. So everything we do in the bank is about that. Africa is our home. We drive her growth. So when we develop people, when we build anything, it's always stitched into the purpose and the strategy of the organization. And if you know that what I do can contribute to that, it helps with that change. So that's my first point. My second thing is that in our learning strategy, we've identified very clearly for the organization what we believe are the 9/10 future skills that we need to build as an organization. So everybody across the 55,000 people are very clear, I need these foundational skills. And in that sits AI, and the other one is ESG. Sustainability is a very big deal for us. So that's the first thing we do. Then in the learning strategy, we have something that focuses on knowledge. We have something that focuses on capability. It's our second quadrant. Our third quadrant is career development. So we actually developed in-house a career navigator, a survey that a person can go in and complete for themselves. And it gives them guidance around their career and their possible next steps. And we run that through the organization. We socialize it, we engage with it. And so people can see from the learning and development team, we really are committed to helping them find their next. We also brought in a talent marketplace where we encourage people to go in, put their profiles, make themselves available for secondments, for projects, for job shadowing, for rotations, to stimulate them, help them build. We've put in academies that allows people to upskill and reskill themselves. So inside the bank, we have really tried, and we are trying to help you identify what your career could look like and give you opportunities to make yourself available to upskilling and reskilling things. One of the biggest projects we did was the Universal Banker project. So in the past, a banker was one thing, and people had to go from this person to this person to this person to this person. If I had needed a vehicle financing, if I had a home loan, if I needed a credit card, if I had my investments, whatever, it was different. We then created a role called Universal Banker. It's an 18-month program, and people could go through this program, and they're still going through it. And it now makes you, as the name says, a universal banker. I'm not just a person who does A, B, or C. And in that, we didn't lose a single person to a change in the environment. And in actual fact, we have gone to labor market to bring in 500 new of these people who could do and become what we call universal bankers. So we took the skills and we added to it to create a brand new type of role in the organization, because that's what customers were asking for. Customers said, I don't want to deal with 5 people anymore. I want to deal with one person. If you want to deal with one person, we've got to build you one person who could deal with all 5 of your queries.
That's great. Now, I'd love to get a bit of a sense of comparison between your organization, Scott, and Alison's as well when it comes to the next question. Because one of the things that I see out there sometimes is how vague language can be. So we see, terminology like digital skills, Gen AI skills, soft skills, and sometimes, they mean things and they mean nothing as well. And it depends on the context. How that is, let's say, important from the perspective of academia. How do you actually work to make sure that there is a clear definition, especially when it comes to implementing frameworks of training, Scott? And I will ask Alison to go next.
Yeah, I think maybe universities have not been the best at this. Historically, within a class, we'll have learning outcomes and should be able to say within this class what you'll learn. But within degree programs or what have you, I don't know that we always do a good job of telling students on the front end, hey, these are the skills you're going to get. These are the kind of jobs you're going to be qualified. These are the places in the country where these jobs exist. And we don't always do that. There's kind of this leap of faith that if a student comes to higher education and they get a degree, there's going to be a job. We also don't always do a great job when it comes to talking to industry about, hey, these are the skills our students are learning. This is why you would want to locate, something here to be proximal to that. It's one of the things I really want to make sure we do with what I'm building now is we should be able to say very clearly to every student coming in, if you do this program in robotics, these are the skills, these are the kind of jobs, these are the kind of problems you're going to be ready to solve. And I think that's, going to help them a lot, yeah.
I love this question. And Rihanna talked about it earlier, right? If you haven't got the language of skills, that has to be your starting point. If you are still in the world of job descriptions and job titles in your organization or your education institution, you're way off where the world is going. because we need a much more granular approach to looking at the way that work is done, right? So the title, if I just give a really good example, you might have project manager as your title, but you might be a project manager in IT, you might be a project manager for cybersecurity, you might be a project manager for building construction, right? The way that that job is done, the skills that are associated with it are very different. So first and foremost, we've got to move away from a language of titles and to just be talking skills. And then that's what Lightcast has done. So Lightcast has taken the world's labour market data. So it's taken data on postings, and it's taken data on people, on profiles, and it's organised that into a titles and a skills taxonomy or ontology or framework, whatever you might want to call it. And we've made that open. So we work with educational institutes, we work with HR and EdTech providers to create a common language. And that's critical to being able to unlock the power of skills. And I think, if I may expand a bit on this, within your organization, you've got loads of skills insights now, but it is trapped in different HR tech and HR platforms, and it's fragmented, and it's only relevant to the tech stack that it is in. So your learning management software speaks one language of skills. Your talent acquisition software speaks another language of skills. And then when you then want to compare that to degree courses, or you want to compare that to the external labour market, i.e. what's actually available, none of it talks to each other because it's all in different languages. So without a common language, you can't even start unlocking the power of strategic workforce planning.
That's great. And now, staying in the realm of language, but moving towards the idea of, or lack of clarity sometimes that we see with communication within a company or a university. I guess that my next question would be for you, Brianna, in terms of the importance of narrative, clear communication in association with retention and attraction of talent. I'd love to get a little bit of your perspective, how important that is, that a company has a very clear, let's say very well-defined communication standard to showcase from KPIs to vision, mission, etc. I think that there is probably, especially with ChatGPT, there is a lot of repetition out there, but I'd love to understand from your perspective how this is important.
Thank you for the question. I suppose that's why I had to mention at the beginning that we were 18th out of 850 global organizations voted as a great place to work, because that's a story in itself. That's a narrative. That's already saying to people that company must be doing something right for people to want to work there, for that to be a great place to work. In South Africa, and I think on Africa, we're known for stories. We identify with stories, we're storytellers, and we know that stories have a stickiness factor to them. We know that people learn through repetition, as you mentioned. We know that people learn through association, but we also know that people learn through stories. And so we spend a lot of time and effort into building the stories that we think will stick with people, that will be inspiring, inspirational, engaging, and driving the message across. And again, it's about something that makes me hope, believe, think that I could be, I could also, or I want to. And I was thinking about this even at this conference. So much data flowing around, so much numbers floating around. But when you go home, what will you remember about this conference? You'll probably remember the stories that you shared with people here, of somebody who told you, well, this is how we do it, or this is what I have learned. You won't necessarily remember Coursera, 160 million learners, although you must remember that because that's a significant number of enrollment of learners. But the fact is, you'll remember the stories that people shared with you. And so that's what we do. We build stories around stuff. And we have plenty of videos that we show to people. We have, I must be honest, we have an executive team throughout the group that are incredibly involved in sharing their stories, at going onto podiums and talk to people in a way that they can identify with it. We're just a continent of storytellers. It's what we do.
Absolutely. I mean, I think it's a very natural thing. When you look into it, I guess that numbers and data do mean something, but ultimately the statistics don't bleed. I guess that the narrative is a lot more powerful in terms of conveying meaning, isn't it? I think that's it's an important thing. Now, we have 10 minutes, and I would love to give, if you're okay, the opportunity for the audience to ask a few questions as well. So I wanted to see if I could have some help. There you go, we've got a microphone. So if anybody would like to ask a question, I would suggest to raise your hand and then please tell who you want to ask the question, or if it is to more than one person. Please, sir, go ahead. I think his microphone's still not working. So it's, there's another one coming, I imagine.
We know this one works.
Oh, thank you. We'll pass our rounds over here.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm a late comer, but I want to add a value to this subject. It's a very simple way. We call one husband, six wife. The wife is what to change, when to change, which to change, who to change, subject, and whom to change, and lastly, why, and finally, husband role is how to change. And that's open to the public or panel. I really like this topic, and it's a part of my life for my self-growth. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So did I understand correctly? The question is how to change? Okay.
Wow.
It's a very, yeah?
I'm not qualified to answer this question,
challenge.
but I'm trying to buy everyone else some
Okay.
time so that they can think of their answers. So I think we played a little bit to this earlier. The how to change is linked to the storytelling, but it's also linked to the why. The storytelling is about bringing your employees on the journey, I think, and your business leaders. The why, for me, is why are we doing this, right? And I think that depends on your industry, it depends on your function, it depends on where you are in the world, and I think that changes. But ultimately, why are we doing it? We're doing it because the skills that we need tomorrow are not the skills that we have today. So if you take that and then say, that's our story, then you can blend that into the how do we bring people on the journey.
I mean, I would say one how is we have to collaborate on this because like we have representatives here from academia, from industry, and if I change my programming to be skill focused, but industry is still talking jobs, my students aren't going to get jobs. If you change yours to be skill focused, but I'm still job focused, you're going to say there's no talent. We have to have these kind of conversations where we're all together because we have to move together.
Pedro, we have a question in Arabic here. Is that
Please,
okay?
if you could translate that, okay? Thank you.
أنا بشكركم كثير.
Thank you so much. It was very useful. I have been utilized from the development of future skills, and one of the most important things that I have ever acquired in my life, but regretfully, based on my personal experience as a handicapped person and a person with special needs, it was an opportunity to learn, but there was no opportunity to get a job because organizations and the corporates are not committed to hire handicapped people, and we should have a law and regulation that give a quota or to increase the share of the handicapped people to get a job, so a handicapped person can benefit from opportunity to learn and opportunity to get a job.
We wanted to thank everyone for the opportunity to join the Future Skills for All initiative. It was very helpful, and he said that it was transformative in his learning journey. But he said, unfortunately, due to his disability, he was unable to fulfill a career, a full-time career. And he suggested that corporations, companies, governments allocate a quota for people with determination in terms of roles and jobs. So if you guys have any comments.
No, I think it's more well, a comment in terms of like how organizations are, ready to embrace the support.
Thank you. I think that actually the move to a skills-based environment will support actually organizations in their ability to hire people who have different abilities, and that may be that you have disabilities that could prevent you doing a job of a certain job title. But when you break that title down into the skills that are required to do the work, then actually you can start to see that an individual may be able to contribute 70%, 80%, 10% of that job, and then you can move into talent marketplaces and think about how work is done across our populations and our talent populations differently. So I hope, actually, that this will be transformative for people of all abilities.
Very well. Thank you. I would like to check if there is any... Yes, gentleman over there, please.
Hi, good morning.
Great.
So my name is Dr. Riyad. I'm from the American University in the Emirates. Thank you for the session today. It's really brilliant. To be honest, there are a lot of key terms, key words that I'm going to focus on, which are skills, storytelling, AI using ChatGPT, same as we are evolving as individuals, and we have to go in a very fast way to keep on learning, as well as you said, you show us a presentation, Pedro, for the Gen AI courses that's been taught in the last quarters. There is still the problem is that companies are still evolving as well. And they are still using AI and all these systems to the ATS systems, the CV-friendly system, to filter as much possible as CVs that's been reached. A friend of mine working at Shalhoub Group as HR talent acquisition, he was very honest to say that they receive around 1,000 CV for one job post. Out of that 1,000, we have the first filter, which is a very normal filter. And then we have around 100 applicants. Next, they have their own hidden filter, which they will reach around 10 filter. Now, 10 candidates. Out of then 10 candidates, I can go and check the storytelling, as Rihanna said. But if I was unable to reach and to hack the system being done by the companies themselves, what can I do? Because today I'm here with my students, and we want to learn how can we hack the system being done by the companies themselves. So please, if you can enlighten us, it would be grateful. Thank you so much.
We have very similar situations. So we run quite a lot of youth unemployment programs. And for every one position, we get over 10,000 applications for that one position. You cannot do that without AI. You have to run a system through that uses an algorithm to sift it out, so that we can get to shortlisting. Of course, when you go for more senior positions that are far more specialized, it's much easier. You don't get the same volume of applications. But particularly in the youth space, we get thousands, tens of thousands applications for one opening in the organization. And there we use algorithms. We use systems to filter through, and they look at things like age, race, gender, ability, qualifications, skill sets, all of those things. So we have to use systems to do that until it whittles it down to a manageable chunk of people that we could then run through a type of assessment, which then is a little bit more rigorous and then filters it down again until a point where it's a manageable number of people for interviews. So we sit with a very similar problem that we cannot solve, we cannot address without the support of systems. What the open marketplace, what the talent marketplace does, is it starts to infer. So the more information you can put onto that system, the more, so you put your job or your role or your position on, and you describe it as best as you can in terms of skills and expectations. You then encourage the employees to do the same, to go and position themselves in terms of skills and projects. And the system then does the matching for you, and it suggests, here are the 5 top or 10 top candidates that you could look at. But that's primarily, we use that for internal hires. And to be quite honest, we try to reduce our external hires and rather give our internal people an opportunity to reskill, upskill, so that they can stay within the organization. But those are the things that we use. I don't know if that actually answers your question, but that's exactly what we have to, we have no choice. The volume of applications against the positions available is just impossible from a human perspective to address.
I think, I'm conscious we haven't got much time left, but yeah, we are in a world where we are in danger of bots talking to bots, right? And we need to make sure that the human intelligence and the knowledge remains at the heart of everything that we do. I think that that's part of what we're talking about today. What we have to do is say, how do we make it easy for a company to be able to manage applications? And if I waved a magic wand, that would mean that when someone applies to an organization for a role, instead of silence, they hear, you know what, you weren't right for this role. These are the skills that you were short on, and these are the courses that we recommend you take. So that actually, as a candidate applying for that role, you get something, you learn something, and you're given some advice. That's a world where we need to land.
Yeah, I mean, I think we have a gap right now in that we have degrees, but we have skills, right? And that's not really lined up. And so, you know, you can talk to the folks at Coursera about the micro-credentials or badges, but I think we need to figure out some way that we can make it very obvious that someone can demonstrate these are the skills I have. That's more than just how well I can describe myself on my resume, right? And we don't have that right now. We don't have that language right now.
And I think that is something, it's very contextual. What we find is that we sit in a country with an unemployment rate of 38%. People don't apply for positions that they qualify for. They apply for anything. If there's a vacancy, they'll send their CV. I know of a lot of youth, they'll send their CV, 300 copies of it, to companies, just so that they can, maybe somewhere, someone can pick them up. And it's not just youth, it's across the board. So we have to have a filtering mechanism that allows us to just take the top layer out, and then we can go into the second and the third layers. But it's a big problem that you have raised. And unfortunately, it's the only way that at the moment we know how to cope with it. We do a lot of outside projects to help people develop, build skills. We try to change the language of skills. Like my colleagues here have said, you try to change it at university, you try to change it in general of how people speak, so that you can get a better match. You try to position your adverts in a way that people can understand them by saying, can you do the following? And when we do the assessment, even in the organization, we ask people, how long have you been using the skill? When last did you use the skill? Would you like to have training on this skill? So we also try to phrase our questions and gather data in the best and simplest way so that we can help you know, to make the best decision and help for that person, help to set them in their career path. But sometimes volume just necessitates different types of actions, and personalized actions are not always viable.
Thank you so much. Well, I think that I know that there are some people raising their hands, but unfortunately, we seem to be 3 minutes over time, and my colleague is over here to, push me out. So I would like to thank you all for joining this session today, and a big special thanks to our panelists. Thank you so much. It was really, really insightful. And Khalid, I will let you carry on. Thank you.